You're listening to the Decidedly podcast with Sanger Smith and Shawn Smith. Our mission is to help business owners like you defeat bad decision-making so you can improve your health, wealth, and relationships. We do this by digging deep into the stories and expertise of our guests and distilling their knowledge into actionable wisdom for you to carry into your life and business. If you're new to the show, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of our weekly episodes. If you prefer to watch this week's episode, head on over to YouTube for the full video. Now, let's get into this week's episode and defeat bad decision-making in your life and business.
I get on these rabbit trails sometimes and then just waste time researching stupid ass things.
Okay,
Can you relate?
I do that a lot.
Yeah. But I feel better about it after, what was the episode we were talking about joyous exploration? Sort of looking at that. That's how I justify it. So the issue is I saw this image as an aerial image of a baseball field in this town, right? And in the town, there was this building that intruded into the outfield of the baseball field. And I was like, that seems weird, because it was like 400 feet on one side and then like 200 feet on the other. I said, that's a really odd. Mm-hmm. How should baseball fields be sized? You know what the answer is?
However they feel like.
However the hell they want.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
There's no standard to it. I'm like, well, that's it. Who designed this game where you can just like, what's the field look like? It's whatever.
Yeah,
well, how far should it go out? That doesn't matter.
Far enough.
Yeah, far enough, but not too far, but not too close either.
And the walls can be however height they want to be too.
Yes.
You got little short walls in Yankee Stadium and massive wall
in Boston, there's this big green monster that's super tall.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's interesting. I think it goes to, there's some standards because the plate distances are all the same.
The plate distance
the mound distance is the same. The mound height is the same. Mm-hmm. The size of the plate is the same.
But all the most important stuff out where all the home runs happen.
I don't know if that's the most important. I think the plates are the most important.
Okay.
The structure of the game is the same every time. And then the distances, I think, it's kind of like analogous to life. You got to have there's the basics that you got to follow.
Okay.
You got to have the plates.
Sure.
You got to have 4 of them. And 3 of them.
Okay. Sure.
Right. You got to have there's some rules you got to follow. And then there's some areas where you can have freedom. But if you don't follow the rules, you can't have any freedom. Before long, it turns into cricket and nobody wants to watch that.
Nobody understands the rules to that game.
Yeah. So in business, there's some rules.
Have a standard.
Have some standards. You got to follow. You got to do the tried and true. You got to do the simple stuff.
But give people the flexibility to be creative.
There you go. Look at that insight.
And look at that out of a stupid rabbit trail.
Speaking of someone who is willing to experiment with have the freedom to make the outfields different sizes, so to speak, in other areas of life, Matt Beaudreau is transforming the landscape of leadership development for young men, turning them into leaders. He's the founder of Acton Academy, Placer Schools. They were schools with development on emphasis in cultivating confident, independent young people. Since then, he's moved away from Acton and to Apogee Strong. He's a co-founder of Apogee Strong, a mentorship program designed for 12 to 22-year-old young men to take on challenges presented by men who have come before them. So it's a wonderful program he founded with Tim Kennedy. We got to talk with Matt about his wisdom in going through the public school system as a student and a teacher and applying the good things and the things that the public school system gets wrong into a new system of schooling for the next generation of young men in America. And we took some of these learnings and applied them to business. So whether you're a parent of 12 to 20-year-old sons, you're 12 to 22 years old yourself, or you're a business owner with no kids and kind of looking at how do I relearn and unlearn, and how do I do that for my employees too, this podcast will give you some great insight from Matt. Stick around. Laugh a little bit, learn a lot. I'm Sanger Smith with my dad, Shawn Smith, and this is Decidedly. Matt, I was thinking about you on my honeymoon.
I mean, that's about the best way to start a podcast ever, right there.
That's what I was thinking.
That's either the best compliment or the creepiest statement you could ever say.
Yeah.
No, both, but that's what makes it so awesome, because that's the first thing we've ever actually said to each other in person.
Exactly.
That makes it even better. I like that. Tell me about this.
Well, let me tell you why. So I went to Barcelona and we went to this was last week, we were in the Picasso Museum, and there were all the typical like Cubist paintings that you expect to see from Picasso in the Blue period. And before that, there were his early art. And it's nothing like all of the famous Picassos that you recognize. There was one in particular that was, he painted when he was 15. It was a First Communion painting. It was this young girl, flowing dress, and it just signified so clearly this life transition. It's like becoming of something. And so it made me think of the work that you do and challenging young boys to grow into men. And I was like, man, when did I become a man? And I think we
still waiting.
It's a challenge because there's not that cultural, demarcation.
Yeah, there's not a bar mitzvah that you have. There's a
So what do you think it was for you? Can you identify a moment?
Yeah, I wish I could. That's part of the problem, right? Is I wish I could give a certain moment where it's like, okay, now I am a man. It was a series of events and ultimately a series of decisions, and that's fine. We can reach that, we can reach that stage on our own. Potentially, we start taking on more responsibility, and we start pouring into others, and we start defining our purpose, and we start, doing all the things that we would define as quote unquote maturity. And that's great. But what about having somebody that ushers you into that? What about somebody that sets the foundation for that early on? We've lost that in culture in a number of ways. The rites of passage for me, it had to be a series of decisions to take on more responsibility. It had to be a series of decisions to put away, the childish pursuits. So it was a series. There was no one thing where it's like, oh, now I'm a man. And again, it's not that a rite of passage when brought through, from other men automatically makes you a man, but there's such an important symbolism there that we've absolutely lost. I always tell people 1944 was when we started using the word teenager. We didn't use that.
Wow.
People don't know that we didn't use that prior to. It wasn't even a term prior to. And we've essentially made it this thing where it's like, okay, well, since your brain's not quote unquote fully developed, well, then we're going to give you this free license to act like a monkey for the next 10 years. And that's a disservice to our young people. When we have those rites of passage, when we hold that bar up, they'll meet it.
Yeah. It's something that's certainly absent from our culture. You see it in other cultures where there is that rite of passage into adulthood. Quinceañera or bar mitzvah, or lots of cultures have that. And we just don't. And, I've heard people say that parents really never view their offspring as adults until they have their own kids. So that's probably too late. but mentally, that's where you get. This is great. But let me back up and just kind of give us a little bit of background, Matt, on how you got interested in developing men and education and that sort of thing.
Yes. I tell people my story in education started when I was 4. I promise I'm not going to take you all the way back 40 years and bring you through this long diatribe, but I've never been anything that I'd say, I'm not overly intelligent, but I'm really good at seeing patterns. And I remember sitting in a classroom at 4 years old, realizing there was a game going on. I remember very clearly being put in the red group, looking around going, okay, those kids can't read. They can read a little better than they can. They're a little better. And these are the best readers. That's interesting. They're grouping us together by this. By 8 years old, I remember thinking, I'll never get anything less than A's. I get how this game works. I'll win the game. Piece of cake. And I did. I got my straight A's because I understood the pattern, not because I was that smart. So I started looking at patterns very, very early on. And so in my 20s, I come out of college with my straight A's, doing all the right things, but had no idea who I was. I turned down a job at the White House, and now I'm like, all right, cool. Who am I? What do I do? I have no idea how to do anything but play school. That's the only pattern I've ever figured out, because that's what I was told is going to have everybody throwing these jobs at me, right? And so I end up at Stanford University, and I'm seeing these patterns play out over and over and over. The young people are way smarter than me, but they're failing at life. They're miserable. The maturity level is not there. The responsibility is not there. The efficacy is just not there. And so naively, I went, okay, well, I'll go help by being a public school teacher. I'll start talking to these young men when they're younger. And so that really is what began the progression. And as I started moving through public school teaching, and administration, private school, I started realizing that school was a game that's not meant to develop people in general, and it's surely not meant to develop young men. So I was forced with a couple of decisions. One was launch my own campuses to send my own children. But two, I wanted to do something specific for the young men. Even in the campuses that I had that were built, were more akin to having a young person develop the right way, I still wanted to make sure we had good men pouring into young men. So that was kind of the probably 30 years of trajectory right there in 60 seconds or less.
I'm old enough to remember when Carter put the Department of Education in place in 79. I haven't checked back on how we're doing educationally as a nation, but I'm sure it's awesome. We have that whole department set up.
Listen, 92% of our population over 18 has a government diploma, and I would say 92% of our population wildly educated, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they're probably killing it.
Yeah, we're doing
I
real
saw
well.
some statistic, don't hold me to the number, but it was maybe the Detroit public school system where only 5% of the kids were reading at grade level.
Yeah.
Across the system.
There's a million different issues with all that. One, that we've decided that grade level is a thing. That's not a thing. I don't know how old you guys are, but I don't know if I read at a 44-year-old grade level. What grade is that? I don't. So like that in and of itself is a weird concept. The point is we should be able to read well, and not read just to regurgitate, some sort of answer. We should be able to allow books to do what they're supposed to do, which is change our lives. But we kill the love of reading early. And it's not just a school issue. There's a multifaceted. We have fatherless homes. There's a million things, but you're absolutely right that these trends in education are across the board.
Other than the education failures, like not meeting the mark, what was it that you observed in students as a public school teacher that you thought, whoa, this needs to be solved?
Yeah, it's what I call, I appreciate that question. It's what I call the meta skills. So we have a religious belief, because we've all grown up in this, that academia is what should be put on the pedestal. And that is, even though we all logically understand this isn't real, put academia on a pedestal. As long as we do well from an academic standpoint, well, gosh, then life's going to turn out really, really well. The problem is we all know people who academically did really well and their life has sucked. We also know people who academically were garbage, but they're amazing humans with an amazing life. So that's not the game of school does not match the game of life.
Yeah.
And so the game of life, these meta skills, that's what I observed the most. So I've got all of these, again, young people at Stanford. I'm going, oh my God, you're so much smarter than I am. But they don't understand how to write the check for their tuition. They're coming in and they're crying about the amount of homework. They're transferring into the workplace, and I'm working with these organizations that are like, we want to fire all of them. They don't show up. The work ethic isn't there. When they're there, they're stressed. They're highly anxious. Physically, they're breaking down, emotionally, relationally. The things that actually matter, we're not doing really a good job at. Well, shouldn't education partially help you towards those goals?
Yeah, and when I look at some of the history of education, how it started, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your area, but wasn't it started in this country as a way to,
like a warehouse worker training for
feed in industrial
factory work
revolution? Yeah. So you don't want people who think for themselves. You want compliant workers who follow directions, who can sit still for a long period of time and do what they're told.
Correct. And don't question authority. Right. That's a huge piece of that, is not to question authority. Don't question the person in charge, whoever that is, whoever claims to be the authority. Don't question him or her. You are correct.
I was just talking to my grandpa, Shawn's dad, and he was telling me yesterday about the teacher asking you when you were in like 4th grade how many islands there were.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I mean, just like anybody, we've all had great teachers and then teachers who weren't so great.
Yeah.
And I had the ones that you remember the ones that you don't were not the great ones, right? And some of them I had that would just sit at the front of the class, read the notes. We would write down the notes, and that was class. Like, she would just read to us. And so this one teacher was reading, and it was about geography in the U.S. or something like that. And she says, "Okay, class, there are 50 states." And we would write down, there are 50 states. Because there are 2 of those states that are islands, Hawaii and Rhode Island. And so everybody wrote that down. And I raised my hand and I said, I don't think Rhode Island's an island. And she said, "Shawn, they wouldn't call it an island if it weren't an island." I said, I don't think so. So I went up to the map that's in the class and pointed to her. I said, "See, I don't think that's an island." And that bit of correction was not appreciated by her. And this was not a 23-year-old teacher right out of college. This was an older teacher, had been teaching that for 35 years. Like, good Lord. Yeah, my dad got me out of it. Like, he's like,
and pulled you out of the class.
Oh, he pulled me out of the class. I was out of that class the next day. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. There's so many, I'm like going through every single state and trying to get a ridiculous reason that it's named that too. So that's awesome. And I'm like, well, of course, that's the main state. Why? And where's Old York? It's got to be there somewhere too, right? So
it's the main state.
Like, this is so good. That's so important. And look, here's the reality. There are amazing humans who are teaching. There are still amazing humans who are teaching in the system. We need good people there because we've got some families that are completely broken and they're not going to see better humans than the ones they see in the school. So look, I'm all for good human beings who are working even in a system that I don't agree with. But, again, I don't hold back around my feelings for the system itself.
So you saw these meta skills and you started an alternative school option for kids, right? So how does the Acton Academy work and functionally create different outcomes for kids?
Yeah. And I'm going to be very clear. I'm not associated with Acton at all anymore, right? 0% associated with them. I did open a few. We've got now 106, I believe, Apogee locations that are underneath what Tim and I have created to focus on meta skills too. But there are some similarities.
Well, let me maybe ask it different, not so much about Acton, but about that first step that you took to say, hey, I'm going to do something different outside of public schools.
But for sure. So the biggest things, like you said, the meta skill side, and what's hard is, okay, I think I'm probably in the middle age-wise of the two of you, even though I look older than the both of you. But here's what we all think of when we hear alternative school. You're like, oh, those are the kids that are about to go to juvenile hall.
Sure.
Right? That's what we think of. That's when I grew up, that's what it was. All we mean is the alternative to this conveyor belt industrial model. And there's a million ways to have a better alternative to that. So we focus on a few key things. One, we want Socratic conversations. We want students to learn how to think and how to communicate. It's not what to think and when they have to think it by. It is how to think. All schools use the buzzwords of we're developing critical thinkers. Are you? I don't even think you started with thinking. Never mind critical thinking. Critical thinking means you're thinking about your thinking. It means you're actually willing to question what it is you believe, look for the evidence, listen to somebody else. So Shawn or Sanger goes, okay, well, this is my interpretation of that. And here's the data that I have. You can listen to that. You can not feel emotionally attacked because somebody else has a different opinion than you. And you can go, all right, let me weigh the evidence. Let me ask. Let me be curious. Let me dive into that a little more. Right? All of these things are encompassed in thinking. And then having the ability to communicate in what we call civil discourse. This country theoretically used to be able to do that. It's not Bloods versus Crips on every freaking situation.
Yeah.
Hey, like, let's have some conversation. This is what I believe. This is why I believe it. And tell you what, we're going to find a whole lot of things, all three of us, that we agree on. That's awesome. We will find, if we dig long enough, things that none of us agree on. So what, now we can't talk to each other, right? And so it's that whole concept. So the communication piece is huge. The Socratic conversations piece is huge. The individualized academia is fine. There's room, there's time and place for it, but let's take a look at it from a human development standpoint versus this concept of a grade level standpoint. That's not real. Human development is real. There's these different brain jumps and these stages that we go through. 8 is your huge brain jump, 12-ish, there's a huge brain jump, another one at 16, yes, another one at 25. But so why don't we go, okay, well, what are people capable of right around there? When they don't start really thinking in an abstract fashion until they're about 12. So why are we trying to jam word problems in earlier than that when they don't? So it's just taking that development into play and understanding that some students are going to fly through some of the academia. So let's give them an ability to do that. I had 11-year-olds doing trigonometry and calculus. I had other 11-year-olds where it was like, man, addition and subtraction is still a hard thing. Okay, cool. You need to be better than you yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. So having the ability to personalize the academia mattered. Having collaboration around solving problems that matter, creating something in a real world environment.
How do you personalize the experience at scale?
It's easier than ever at this point. So again, remember, academia on a scale of importance, I'd say 4 or 5 other things are far more important than academia. Far more. I've seen plenty of students that have gone through the entire K through 12 academic standards in 3 years once they were ready for it.
When you say the academic standards, are you talking about just the functional at the foundational level?
The knowledge base,
historical knowledge, scientific knowledge, those types of things.
Bingo. The limited knowledge at the low bar that is set for our standards, right? When people think school, they think life doesn't work in subjects, but they think, oh, but school works in subjects. And so you've got to regurgitate the information from each subject, right?
You've got to know when the Civil War was and generally what it was about. There you go. You've done. Now keep going.
Yeah.
Maybe who was the president?
And let's be honest. Can you Google that too? Like, what is the functionality of that moving forward?
That's such a very good point, because when I train advisors, take someone who is college educated, but they've never been in a position to advise someone on their money. Like, what I almost don't really care if they've had any college education on financial planning. I don't think that really makes any difference on whether someone's going to be successful. I had a lot of that education, actual academic in college financial planning education, but everything I needed to learn, I learned from working in the industry before that point. So
bingo. So you're hitting. So listen, this is where we start getting to the crux of the difference between schooling and education.
Yeah.
Schooling says, here's the religion that everybody must go through at the exact same time. You get good grades and that all the doors are going to open for you.
Yeah.
Education, G.K. Chesterton said it best. He said, education has nothing to do with subjects. He said, it's a transfer of a way of life.
Yeah.
Right. So when that's the case, what you just talked about was the apprenticeship model. It's working in a field with somebody who is ahead of you in that field and allowing that transfer of a way of life. My kids are 13, 11, and 8 right now. They can tell you that there's a 1040 tax system. There's a 1041 tax system. We operate in the 1041 tax system. Why? Because daddy owns businesses and the businesses have a cash flow, and we can look at the P&L and we can see how that flows into a business trust, which flows into a family trust, which flows into a private foundation. And we use our private foundation money they don't have to fully understand that, but that's normal for them right now.
Yeah, it's not a foreign language. So when they need to implement it, they have all of these tools.
Correct. But they can talk about that, but they haven't gotten their A in trigonometry yet, right? So this is what we're talking about. So on our campuses, doing real work, launching real businesses where they're taking a product or service to the market and working with mentors who are actually in fields. So they're taking on these apprenticeship opportunities. They can see what they like and what they don't like. That's real education. Oh, and then they have responsibilities on campus. They have jobs on campus and internal economy. So the maturity level stays high. They're experiencing real world problems and real world things to solve. that's a person that comes out and takes a whole lot more responsibility than somebody's like, no, I sit and obey and get my grades.
You mentioned G.K. Chesterton. I don't know how familiar you are with the series of Chesterton Academies in the United States. There's one that just opened in Fort Worth a couple of years ago, and they're associated with the parish that I go to. What they do that's so cool is one of the ways that they are able to provide a private education for their students who otherwise would not be able to afford it. What other schools do is they just charge a lot of money to the capable families, and so that they don't have to charge money.
Yeah.
So you're just subsidizing somebody else's child. What they do is they go, okay, for 4 days a week, you're coming to school. And on Fridays, you're going to go work at this company in town that has paid us effectively a very reduced rate to get access to the labor of 6 students every Friday or whatever. And I was like, whoa, that's such a great model to get someone, capable of just even understanding those basic meta skills of, how do you talk to your boss? How do you talk to a customer? Forget even the technical components of whatever industry they're working in.
Oh, we would bring on interns, and one of the early questions that I would ask these interns when we would bring them into our business is, I said, are you here to earn or learn? Because there were 2 paths we could take somebody down. And I said, we can just pay you this rate and we're going to work you. And we're not really interested in teaching you. We just want to get work product out of it for the dollar we're going to pay you. Or are you here to learn? And that's we're going to pay you less because you're going to be a drain on our productivity for a while, because we're going to have to spend time showing you how we did this, why we did this, what comes next, and teaching this. And it's interesting. Most of the people that we would bring in said, I want to do the learn track. Like, I'll forego the money.
Yeah.
I want to learn. And I even had one father, this was a guy I knew. He said, I want my son to be on the learn track. And I want you to teach him. I'm going to pay you. Like, he paid me.
Wow.
Or paid the guy's salary. Basically, he didn't pay me, but he paid the kid's salary for him to work in our office so he could learn from our son.
That's a great opportunity for kids that have those resources. But for people that don't, that model is interesting.
Were you concerned when you look at, so I know you're trying to solve the issue of metacognition around how students are thinking about what they think about and how to think for themselves, and using the Socratic method as a way to get them to think about things. And that's a very interactive teaching, a lot of questioning, a lot of dialogue.
Yes, sir.
Were you concerned that there might be that might be a bigger pitfall if you get the wrong teacher in there who's basically indoctrinating or teaching them the wrong types of things in terms of their point of view, for example?
Great question. Concerned? No. Intentional? Yes. That's a great question. It's a very astute question. That is paramount to this being effective. Our, what we call guides at Acton, what we call coaches on the Apogee side, that is a huge piece of that. So we do continuous training for the coaches throughout the entire network. Again, we got 106 locations right now. We've got, I think we'll probably add 100 a year. I'm talking physical K through 12 campuses over the next few years. And I will continuously work with, and I've got a team that continuously works with all of the locations as well as our coaches on things like that. How do you do this well without tipping your hat? It is not up to the coach, the guide, to give away what he or she believes in anything. That's the point, right? Is not to have any kind of nod to any sort of thing that can look like, here's my opinion, here's an indoctrination of any sort. It is, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you believe what you believe? How do I poke back? Doesn't matter if I agree with you and I don't agree with you, or vice versa. How do I poke back and go, okay, but what about this, to each one of you? And then get you to learn to engage in that civil dialogue with each other. You're exactly right. It's such a hard thing to do, but that is such an important piece of that. Very much so.
How does a teacher demonstrate that ability to you before they're put in a position where they're doing it with students?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question too. We want to see I want to see some evidence of curiosity, but here's one of the things, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too. I always say hiring somebody, it's like dating. You want to go through a process. You want to get to know each other. You want to try to get to the root of who that person really is as quickly as possible. And then you're making the best guess. Yeah, I'm going to go into a relationship with this person and we're going to see where this goes. Hiring.
And you might be wrong sometimes. Hiring is the same thing. So for people like this, it's best to be very clear and upfront and very intentional, right? I always tell people the best date I ever had in college was this girl, Savvy, I'd been waiting to go out with her forever. And we sit down on that very first date and she's like, okay. She's like, I want to just be very clear up front. She's like, I absolutely love country music. She's like, that's a non-negotiable. She's like, I need you to like country music. She's like, I love pageants, like the Miss America pageants. I want you to watch every single one of those pageants with me. And when the Oscars comes on, it's an Oscar party. She's like, you're going to get dressed up and we're going to, have an Oscars party. And I'm like, that's so awesome that you are so like up front with this. I'm like, here's $20. Enjoy your meal. I'm done. I'm gone. But thank you, right? Because that clarity up front, cool, man. You just saved me months of you're beautiful and done, right? So like you saved me so much heartache. So I want to do this. I do the same thing. I encourage our affiliate owners to do the same thing. Look, this is how we need you to show up. I don't care what your political views are, your ideological views, I don't care. But I need you to know they better never know. We got to be upfront about that. And so then the training is always around how to do that better. It's hard, man. It's hard. We all tend to want our opinions to come out and it's very hard. And I'm not going to pretend anybody's perfect at it, but it's upfront and then we continue to work on it. Yeah, the best teacher I ever had who did that, it was at a private school and I went to public school up until the last 2 years of high school. I went to private school and his name was Coach Chappell. Every student thought that he was the opposite ideology that they had. That was seemingly the takeaway is they all thought, no, he's just so dang liberal. He's too conservative or whatever. And it was like, it seems to me that you think that he's the opposite. I didn't think that. I was like, I think he's just like,
he's gaming us all.
I think he's like a Romney Republican or something. I thought he was like kind of just like a boring middle somewhere. The guy's like super hardcore lefty. Like now that he's not working there, he's like radical left wing, always posting on Facebook. I was like, that's amazing that no one would have thought he was, this like socialist because he did a really good job.
He did a really good job and good on him, man. I mean, one of the best compliments I ever got is we had one of my campuses when I still lived in California. We had, it was 2020 when Jo Jorgensen was running as the Libertarian candidate, right, for president. And so she did her Northern California tour at one of my campuses. And so I had the honor of introducing her as this presidential candidate. And as she's speaking, we had so many people there on campus. I had 3 different occasions of people coming up to me during that event. One, it was like, man, I see how you're running these campuses. I see how you're running the school. The students get to, have voices and you're clearly liberal. So why are like Jo Jorgensen here, right? Like what? That's interesting to me, right? Same event, man. I had somebody who was just like, oh my gosh, I kind of knew just the way you operate. I knew you were a libertarian, but like this confirms it. That's great. I love this, right? And then I had somebody else come up to me too, and they're like, hey man, like this is interesting to me because you're clear, like wearing a suit. You guys are starting so many businesses with the students. You're pro-business. Are you carrying right now? I'm like, yeah, I got a 38 right here. And he's like, okay, so you're Republican, right? And it's like, man, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, they shouldn't know, but if people can understand more of what they believe through being guided by these types of questions, it's amazing.
That's the point. That's what education, that's what education should be for.
I hear a lot of, particularly this comes out of people who are more conservative, and they'll complain about the public school system. They're like, well, that has no place in the public school system. Have you ever heard people say that?
Yeah.
Whatever they're saying. And I'll always say, no, it absolutely does have a place. I said, you don't understand the point of the government school system is to actually tell your kids those things. Like that is the point of the school system.
That's the goal,
is to tell them that. Let me ask you a question. When you look at, and I guess this is particularly for men, because I think the way the school structure is set up is probably a mismatch more for men than women on how young men sort of think and grow.
Correct.
What do I have to fight against after I get out of school that the school has taught me? What do you think I ought to unlearn?
Yeah,
to move forward.
A great question right there, because unlearning is just, especially now, you can make an argument that it's just as relevant as learning, being able to learn. How quickly do things change right now? 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we didn't have Riverside and be able to jump on this cell phone I've got right here is going to be a pager in the next 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know. Things are going to continue to evolve. So you got to be able to learn what is needed. You got to be able to unlearn and not be stuck to certain things. So that's a really good question. I appreciate that question very much. I get a lot of people who will theoretically take my side on the systemic issues of the government schools, but they want to focus on, look, it's the indoctrination, it's the early sexualization, it's the DEI, it's the CRT, it's all cool, great. We can make arguments around some of that. Sometimes some districts, cool, that's fine. The biggest, sneakiest issue are the habits of conformity that take place. To me, that is the biggest issue that we have to unlearn. It's the habit of somebody else is always going to tell you what to do and when to do it. You have to ask permission to everything, including, I'm 18, may I go to the bathroom, please? And they may say no. Don't talk when you're not, spoken to. Go walk in your straight line. Go, like, it's that. Those habits of, I got to give the story of Matt. I started out with a pen, and now at 5, I went, oh, you tell me what the story of Matt is, and we're going to do that until you're 18. People don't pick the pen back up very quickly. They struggle with that. And so there's this whole developmental game of, you don't get to find out who you are, what you're excited about, what you're not excited about. You don't get a lot of responsibility. So now it seems like an issue. You've been force-fed a bunch of things that maybe have not been made relevant to you. And so now you start to confuse learning with school. And that's not the case. We are learning machines. We are growing machines. The factory setting of a human is curiosity and wonder and asking questions. And we want to create and we want to do that. Gets sucked out because you start to equate that as learning, and it's not. So those are the biggest habits, man, that you end up having to unlearn, and people don't unlearn it very fast.
Almost every employee that's ever worked with me has had to unlearn this, like, need to ask for permission. Yeah. And they know it about, they're like, I'm sorry, I have this habit. And it's worse if they've worked for, a bad leader before.
For sure.
So they went through school, they're experiencing this, conformity training that you're talking about. And then they go see it put in practice. And they're like, no, it's not rewarding in a bad leader's domain. They're not necessarily getting rewarded for this conformity, but they aren't getting harmed by it. And so I think, like, that's, there were in Jordan Peterson's, one of his books, he talked about the zebra stripes, right? When the scientists tried to study zebras, they would, like, hit them with a paintball gun, and that never worked. They would, because you can't tell which zebra is which zebra. So, okay, we'll hit them with the paintball gun. Now we know the zebra with the orange dot, that's the one we're looking at. And then they'd always get mauled by lions because this zebra stands out, right? And the lions are using that to their advantage. They go, we're going to go for the zebra with the
everybody to the orange dot guy. Yeah.
And so, like, there is some benefit in general to say, okay, where are your stripes? Like, you don't need to stand out all the time in all ways. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same as just totally sell your soul to conform, especially when the system is asking you to do things that are not in your interest. So I think a lot of people's experiences, they feel safe and comfortable conforming, partly because they've been taught, but partly because they have stories in their life where conforming kept me off the chopping block.
That's right.
You know, I wasn't loud and asking that bad leader questions that were hard to answer, so I didn't get laid off because he didn't even know my name.
For sure. There's always say it's more comfortable to be, there's more comfort in a known slavery than an ambiguous freedom. Because
oh man, and that's deep right there.
And the reality is it feels fine and it feels safe until it's not. And then it feels like you are absolutely screwed, and you might be. 2020 was a great example of this. If you weren't educated, let me back up. My thought on education, and I, believe it or not, was never asked this all through Stanford, through my being in public schools, being like, this was never a question that came up. Seth Godin asked me, what should education be for? Oh, gosh, nobody's actually asked me that. And I didn't know the Chesterton quote at that point of, this transfer of life, and which I love. That is one of my favorite definitions, maybe my favorite definition. But I thought about it and I said, well, I think education ultimately is supposed to be for sovereignty. It's supposed to be for sovereignty and freedom in whatever way I define that. But how I define that is that I don't have to do anything I don't want to do with anybody I don't want to do if I'm not, beholden to anybody that I don't want to be, without harming somebody else too. So what happens if somebody can go, oh, okay, well, the stores are now closed and you can't get toilet paper. Okay, then what? Are you okay? Hey, you can't go get food anymore. Are you okay? Is your family okay? Hey, you don't have a job anymore. Job's all gone. Hey, the market crashed. Hey, the things that you will never have control over, can they take away your livelihood in an instant? Because if they can, you are not safe.
Yeah.
Conforming.
How do you help someone find what that non-conformity should be? In other words, that draws them to that passion, draws them to that sense of purpose where they can really shine when they are at that age. I mean, I think it's easier for a lot of people who are, in their 40s or 50s to figure out, here's my purpose, here's what I'm good at, because I've had a life to live it. But when somebody is going through schooling, the whole world's open to them and they may not know what that is. How do you help figure that out?
It's a really good question. And there is no fail safe. That'd be ridiculously presumptuous and arrogant of anybody to say that, like, well, here is the answer on that is a blanket statement for all of humanity. Again, that would sound more like school. School says, this is how you do it. Everybody does this. We say grade level. We say grades. We say that, like, that's pretty arrogant in my experience. So I think there's a few things, though, that we try to do that we've seen be successful. So I won't say everybody should. I'll say this is how and this is what we've seen be successful. There's three main components for me. One, surrounding them with the right people who are doing this first. So what I mean is, if we go back to Chesterton's idea of a transfer of way of life. So I've got 3 children upstairs, 13, 11, and 8. My wife and I are transferring our way of life to them. Likewise, anybody else that I'm willing to put in front of them or put them in front of, I'm giving a nod to you now are able to transfer a bit of your way of life to my children, right? My son goes to American Top Team out here for wrestling and kickboxing, and I love the coaches. I love their mentality. I love the way they approach things. I love the honor and the respect and the integrity that is shown there. I'm giving that a nod to go, yes, I want you to influence my son. There's education taking place there in those experiences. And so it's being intentional on who gets to impact. So when we're talking about on our campuses, who are the mentors? Who are the people that are there? Who are the parents? The parents are always and forever the primary educators. One thing we are doing with our Apogee campuses that nobody else is doing is you send your children to an Apogee campus, you go through Apogee man and Apogee woman as mom and dad. You go through a very intensive 12-month educational experience. Why? You need to get better as a human. The best way to educate a young person is for the parents to get educated, continue their own education, and bring those kids along. Make that normal in the house. Make those conversations around the 1040 and the 1041 system normal.
Yeah, what a cool concept, because people talk about this all the time, oh, the problem with our schools is the parents, but I haven't heard of lots of private schools claim to screen,
Right.
But I went to a great Christian school. I loved it. I thought it was an amazing experience, especially juxtaposed to the terrible public school experience I had. And I was surprised to learn pretty quickly that their claim of filter, it's Christian families only, like we have a standard, I was like, no, you don't. I'm just looking at the bumper stickers in the pickup line. No, you don't.
Yes, sir. Agreed.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely honest. I remember, I'm not drawing this analogy too tightly, but, we send all our dogs to training when we get a new dog. And the last trainer that we went to, he was like, all right, so here's what I need you to come. And there was almost as much training for the dog owners as there was for the dog, which is super important.
Yes, sir.
Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And this is, I don't know, and I don't want to go, I won't go too far on the side tangent, but we had Dr. Camilo Ortiz come on with our young men that we mentor not too long ago. And he's a behavioral psychologist. And he says, look, my business model is atrocious as far as business, but as far as efficacy, as far as ethically, I don't know of anybody doing this better. He works with a lot of young people who are coming in with the anxiety issues and things like that we're seeing with a lot of our young people. And he does what they call responsibility therapy. And their answer is, and this leads into one of the next kind of pillars for us, is he goes, okay, first I start with the parents. If we got the young people that are having these issues, he goes, my first session's with the parents. And I go, hey, what are you doing? Are you leading by example? Are you being, because they're going to be who you are before they do what you say. So are you doing the right things and moving yourself forward and leading by example? So are you doing that? And then 2, are you getting the frick out of the way? Because a lot of it, there's some over-parenting too. So we're not giving kids responsibility early enough too. And so he's getting parents on board first and then making sure they're able to hand over responsibility. So that's kind of that next, as to surround them with the right people. And that includes the right, all the right inputs. The books matter, TV matter, all those things matter. The music matter. Those do matter to the extent the people matter more. Covey, right? You're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Why is that different for our children? They're still people. It matters. So who do they, get all those influences from? But that second part is responsibility. So giving them a massive dose of responsibility early, they actually crave that. They respond very well to that. Give them responsibility. And in those responsibilities, give them a number of experiences too. I kind of put those two together, responsibilities and experiences. So we live on a farm now. We moved out of California a couple of years ago. We're on a farm in the mountains of North Carolina. There's a lot of work on a farm. Don't know if you've heard about that, but there's a lot, especially when we provide food to local restaurants as well. And I mean, there's a lot of things to do here on the farm. All of my kids have a massive amount of responsibility on this farm every morning, every night, period. It looks different every season. It doesn't matter if somebody's sick, it doesn't feel good. The animals tend to die if you don't feed them. So we're going to go ahead and feed them, even if we don't feel like it. But they have a massive amount of responsibility, and that's been a really, really good thing. We'll do the same thing on campuses. The cleaning of the bathrooms, the kids are doing those things. They all have jobs, so they get that responsibility. And then tied into that is experience, exposure. So it's like, how do you find your favorite food? Try a bunch of food. If you've only ever had 5 foods, and I'm like, all right, Shawn, what's your favorite food? Is it English, math? Is it science? Is it right? And it's like, this is how I'm defining it. It's like, oh, I guess it's this one, right? Because you got to pick one. But if we actually go, okay, what are your favorite foods? Here's this buffet. And you've had a chance over the course of 10, 12, 15 years to try this food and to try this one and this one and this one. One, you're going to make a more educated declaration of what your favorite one is. But what gets cool is you start to go, man, I don't know. I really liked, the tacos, but I also really like Korean barbecue. And shit, what would happen if I put them together? What if I create it, right? You start to get more creative because you have more experience. So those experiences of them starting multiple businesses, working multiple apprenticeships, taking on multiple roles on campus, solving problems that have to do with, the cleaning up the ocean, one session for 6 weeks, and then going into how do I compete against my classmates to build the best rocket that's going to go the highest, to creating a business around physiology and kinesiology. Like, give them a number of experiences. So that's that second part. And then the last part I'll say to answer this, to again, give them the best possible chance as far as what we've seen. This is the sneaky part, and this is where we need parents to help. It's eliminating the distractions. It's addition by subtraction too. Video games. I don't vilify video games, but the reality is, if you have a young man and he's spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day checking off that DNA box that all young men have of wanting to slay the dragon and rescue the princess and go create something he might be checking that off artificially, and he's draining his dopamine, doesn't want to go out into the real world afterwards to actually accomplish anything. That's a problem, right? So eliminating those distractions matters too. And so that's, again, where we need the family's help. But I'll tell you what, you get a recipe of all those things put together, you tend to have a young person that maintains those factory settings of curiosity and wonder and hard work. And you see the maturity come out a whole lot earlier.
I got really lucky with video games growing up in the beginning of the video game age. I don't know if my parents did this intentionally, but I just never had the console that all my friends had. So I had the other one. It's like everybody's PlayStation. I got an Xbox. And so it made it hard for me to get consumed by it. And I didn't really, other than maybe some brief periods. But I love your analogy of the foods, right? If you've categorized life and school and education into these buckets, it's hard to make the connection of, well, what's your favorite subject? Oh, you should go be an airline pilot. That's, there's no subject that's going to tell me that. And the reality is, even within something so specific as a career, there's a million different ways to do that. You can be a financial advisor who's really interested, and you also love reading, or you also love writing. Okay, well, you can be a content creator in that industry. You don't have to just be this cog in a wheel somewhere. So what an amazing impact that I'm sure that's having. Is there I know you focus on creating challenges for kids to overcome because it's a part of the maturity process. Is there a specific challenge that you've created for students that you've seen have a really extraordinary impact?
It's a great question. I appreciate that. There's a couple that I would say are my favorites for who they have to be to get through and come out the other side. Our CEO interview process is one of my favorite things. So the students, whether they're the mentored students in our mentorship programs, or whether it's on a campus, our home education families, one of the things that we're having our students create is a digital portfolio. So it's a report card is great. You play the game well, you obey well, and the teacher that was your English teacher goes, yeah, you obeyed, great, here's an A. Your math teacher goes, yeah, you obeyed and played the game that we designed and you did well, so here's your A. It's a silly, it doesn't represent anything of value. You can't see anything about that young person from that. We have them create digital portfolios. It's essentially branding 101. It is, here's who I am, and here's the proof that I am who I say I am. Here are all the things that I am doing. Here's what I'm creating. And so in the process of that, they're taking on these various challenges. The CEO interviews are great. They're being forced to sit down, and by forced, I mean challenged and invited to. But as the more they do it, the better they get, and the more they're having these positive outcomes. They're sitting down and they're interviewing CEOs, law enforcement officers, first responders. They get used to having high-level conversations with high-level humans. That does multiple things. You start to get, again, comfortable with that communication piece. You start to develop a network of people around you that leads sometimes to apprenticeship opportunities or job opportunities. But you start to also notice patterns. We talked about patterns at the very beginning. You sit down and with 20, 30, 40 different CEOs over the course of a year, and you start to hear some of the same sort of responses, you start to see the patterns of success. You start to go, okay, well, this guy was successful here, this guy was successful here, and this guy's successful here. Wildly different paths and upbringings, but they all said this, right? And so being able to pull out those patterns and reflect. So that's one of my favorites. One of the more obscure challenges that I absolutely love is we do a paperclip challenge with our mentees. And the paperclip challenge is what it sounds like. You start out with a paperclip, and you guys may have seen there was a TED.
The barter your way from a paperclip to a yacht or whatever it was.
I did it. The TED talk was to a house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have them go through the same thing and who they have to become to get comfortable going, okay, I want to figure out how to trade this. Now I traded from a paperclip and I'm up to some remote control and nobody wants a remote control except this guy is a remote control connoisseur and collects them. All right, maybe I can trade with him. So the intentionality there and the communicative skills and man, it's so much fun. We had a young man recently got his very first truck. 16 years old, got his very first truck. $0 spent
from the paperclip.
Yes, sir. Started with
wow.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to ask how far have you seen somebody go? And
that's so incredible.
That's past what I thought it would be.
That's the best example we have. But I'll tell you, I've done even short term, even like on campus. I'll grab a group of high schoolers and I took them out to a mall. We were at a mall for 2 hours, just in the local mall on like a Wednesday morning. So it's not like it's jam packed. We're at a local mall and I'm like, all right, man, you guys got 2 hours. Let's see what you can come back with. You can't leave the mall. So it's just strangers in the mall. You can go into the stores if you want, or like, here you go. I had 5 or 6, young people with us. They came back. Somebody came back with some clothing. Somebody came back with a big giant neon sign. I don't remember exactly what it was, what the sign said, but it was like something you'd hang up in a man cave, in a garage kind of thing.
Yeah.
We had somebody come back with a functional operating cell phone.
Wow.
Within 2 hours. And it's not about what you get. Like, that's not the thing, right? It's about what you learned in that process, who you became in that process, and how you transfer that to another endeavor.
And embedded in both of those challenges is rejection exposure. And a lot of kids don't have an opportunity, especially when we digitize communication. You're not even getting like the soft rejection of having to go sit down next to someone at the lunch table or whatever, I was talking to a client of mine who was dealing with some of his employees. They're like, man, I got this sales guy. He knows the script. He knows what he's supposed to say, and he won't make the sale. And he keeps passing it up. And he tells me it's because he was scared. And I'm like, you got to take this guy out and basically have him do these challenges. Like, take him to Starbucks, and you're going to do a Starbucks tour, and he's going to ask for a free cup of coffee at every Starbucks in town until he gets totally comfortable asking and getting told no. And he enjoys getting told no. And until then, he's never going to.
Yeah. You remember we had a hiring campaign at our office several years ago, and Sanger remembers this. So we had, I think it was like 8 college grads come up to the office, and we gave them that challenge, just like what you described. I said, I want you to just go into this shopping area, meet some people, come back, tell me what you learned. Tell me about them. Tell me about them. What did you learn? What was the experience? And one of them came back and he said, well, I didn't do it. I went to lunch with my mom. My mom came over and we went to Chicken Express. And I said, and I'm trying to save the guy. I said, okay, well, what did you learn there? Like, how was that? And he's like, nothing really. I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to save.
Did you talk to the drive-thru lady? He goes, no, my mom ordered.
And so I said, listen, I'm going to save you some time today. And I wish you the best in life. I wish, all the best. I don't think this is a good match for your skills, but you've got to figure that out.
You do. Yeah. And look, and I wish I could say, oh, that's surprising. It's not. I see it over and over. I hear it from employers over and over and over again, all over the world. And some of the pushback we'll get, from parents of, okay, well, my child's very introverted, and so this, okay, but you can still order food at a restaurant.
Right.
Introverted doesn't explain why I had a lady call me and go, hey, I'm interested in job openings at one of your campuses. Okay, great. And I could hear in her voice, I'm like, okay, well, you sound, maybe, are you a retired teacher? What's going? She's a little older. Well, no, it's not actually for me. Okay.
Oh, no.
Who are you calling? Who are you calling on behalf of? My son. How old's your son? 32. What? What? Like what? Why? And this is not something that I can tell you I only experienced once. I mean, 27-year-olds with parents coming to interviews. Look,
you're kidding.
No, sir. And I wish I was the only person that had this. And look, I'm not making a blanket statement. This is not all young 20-somethings.
Sure.
I understand that's not the case, but I also understand I've seen it more than once, and I know others that have as well. So my point is, like, introversion is one thing. I understand that, but still being able to communicate, ordering your own food, like that's a different level. That, again, communication skills matter. It doesn't mean you're going to be a salesman. Doesn't mean you're going to be, that's fine. Maybe they're just going to be an engineer. Cool. You're still going to have to talk to other people and collaborate with other people at some point. That's a skill. Self-discipline is a skill. Even if you're introverted, self-discipline is a skill to be able to do things you don't necessarily want to do, but these are the things that need to get done right now. Cool. Let's still give you experience of developing those. And maybe that comes with communicating when it's uncomfortable. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. I mean, having the confidence to communicate, it gives you the ability to persuade others, which is the number one success talent if somebody's going to be a business leader.
Before we wrap up, what's your top decision-making tip for business owners?
That's a good question, because business owners in various stages that this could be taken in, obviously a number of ways. And a lot of the men and women that we have in our mentorship programs are business owners too. So we talk about these kind of things a lot. Mike Glover said to me a couple of years ago, and I've loved this and I've hung on to this. He says, look, perfection isn't possible, but it remains the standard. And he was talking about specifically the mantra of the soldiers working at the tomb of the unknown soldier, right? He's talking about those guys, but it transfers to really everything. So perfection not possible, but it remains the standard. For business owners, your business will never be perfect. You'll never be the perfect boss. You'll never, it's not going to be perfect. But I think making decisions from the perspective of, I want to create the ideal version of this business, and whatever it is I'm deciding, what is the ideal, is a better posture to take than most people's posture, which is, how do I avoid problems? How do I fix a problem? How do I navigate a problem? They're just surrounding themselves with the mindset of like, there's a problem, versus the mindset of, what is the ideal and how do I get one step closer? So that's what we've been leading into lately with our business owner clients is let's make a decision based on the perspective of creating the ideal version.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you came, Matt. I remember hearing on, I think it was Tim Kennedy's Instagram page like years ago, hey, I'm working on these schools. I'm going to get this thing started. I was like, man, I'm so excited to see what's going to come out of that, and to know that it's going full force, and to hear about what y'all are doing is really, really exciting and motivating for change in this country.
Thank you for that.
Where can people connect with you and the work that you're doing?
Best place for people to go is apogee.strong.com. We got a little documentary that's there. You can find where our physical education centers are. You can find all the different verticals, men, women, young ladies on the way. Home education tribe. So everything's there on the website. We're probably most active on Instagram at Apogee Program as well.
Great. Yeah, we'll put links on that on the show notes. Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks for talking to us.
Honor is absolutely mine. Appreciate you guys.
My takeaway from talking with Matt is looking at some things that we've talked about before, is that when you recognize an issue, whether it's in your business or philanthropy you're trying to start or something like that, is what is the main issue that you're attacking? And then having the open-mindedness to seek sort of non-standard solutions for that, and he could have solved that issue a lot of different ways, but he picked a really unique solution looking at that Socratic method, and then encouraging sort of those relationships and that curiosity in people and allowing that customization. And so I think in a lot of business solutions and a lot of decision making, looking for that opposite solution and then looking for those creative, customized solutions.
My biggest takeaway is the last quote at the end: perfection's not the standard, or perfection's not possible, but it remains the standard. And that's true in business. Like, that's true in life too. The perfect standard of Jesus Christ is unattainable, but we will continue to aim at it and giving ourselves the grace to know that, hey, I'm not going to meet this perfection all the time, but that doesn't, accepting the fact that I can't be perfect does not change the standard.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision by subscribing to the show and leaving us a review wherever you're listening. We appreciate the support. It helps business owners like you find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com, on Instagram at decidedlypodcast, or grab a copy of Sanger and Shawn's books from the links in the show notes. Finally, we'd like to thank Shelby Peterson of Transcend Media for editing and post-production of the show. Thanks for listening. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.